The last 20 years has been a great story to tell.
The American public should understand the preciousness of being able to govern yourself. In fact, that's what the code words of freedom and independence are.
The Indian nations around the country are going to be able to help make America a better place.
Self-governance gives us that power to make the right choices.
Why rely on someone else to do something that we can do ourselves?
Self-governance means that you are in command.
We stepped into the role of government.
We're able to empower our community.
Self-governance was never about money. It was always about empowering the tribes to function as government.
Knowing that you have that ability to dream the biggest dream, and self-governance is a way to help us get to that point.
If you want success in this country, you bring us to the table.
It's inspired me to keep fighting, to keep learning, to keep educating my children.
We know that the future's never looked brighter. And when we think about self-governance, it's an interesting inquiry because as Americans, we believe that was why the Revolutionary War was fought, is to be able to govern ourselves.
Self-governance began out of the concept that the federal government was consuming too much of the dollars that were appropriated by Congress for the benefit of Native Americans.
Between 1974 and the late 80s, there ended up being a lot of mismanagement and abuse and misuse by the system in terms of how it was managing these resources.
The Arizona Republic came out with a news article talking about how much the bureaucracy consumed the Vineyard programs.
So there ended up being hearings by both the House and the Senate with regard to what's up here, what's wrong.
In 1988, there were a number of prominent tribal leaders, national tribal leaders, who were testifying before Congress.
So we came up with a proposal that was an amendment to the Self-Determination Act that we coined self-governance.
Self-governance was a bill that said, provide us with the funding, but also allow us the ability to design our own programs and then manage them.
Congress decided on a demonstration project.
We had a mixed mash of tribes from the Great Plains to the Great Lakes area, down into the Southwest area in Albuquerque, up into Alaska and Northwest, and as well in California. And 10 of us moved forward.
The first steps were short steps. And I'm sure there was 2 steps forward and 1 step back on occasion. But as we gained confidence and the federal government gained confidence, it was very evident there was a sound policy and a good policy.
I think self-governance is best summarized by Joe Delacruz's statement. It's the ability of a nation to freely determine its social, political, and economic future without external interference.
It's an opportunity for tribes to control their own destiny, their own future, using federal dollars and federal funds and federal programs to provide services to their population.
It allowed us to go negotiate for our fair share of every function and activity that the federal government was administering inside the Bureau of Indian Affairs.
We get to determine what programs we develop, how they develop, and how they're applied.
Deciding for yourself what's good for your land, your people, and what to do with your resources.
Through the whole process, there's a learning curve. Outside of self-governance, I don't know where the learning curve comes from. If you're reliant on the Bureau to provide services for you, or if you're handed a contract that says, do this, give me a final report, you're managing something for somebody. We're managing for ourselves.
Self-governance is a recognition by the federal government that we can govern ourselves, and we appreciate that.
Self-governance is about resolve. It wasn't easy. The knee-jerk reaction to something new is no. And the response to the knee-jerk reaction is, but we still want to do it.
I can remember the early days. We had no choice. We had no say. They said, here's the priorities. Here's what you're going to spend your money on this year.
I think some of the biggest challenges, I think, at that time was working with the BIA itself and getting them to understand and accept, what the tribes were trying to do in empowering the tribe itself and taking over the responsibilities that were once administered by the Bureau.
I think the greatest challenge is the funding levels. You can have all the amazing dreams and goals and visions for the future, but if you don't have the dollar to execute and carry out, it just remains a dream.
If we can't run the programs as efficiently as we should, as we want to, then we would hardly have any choice but to not be able to administer those programs.
Part of the problem is the fear that's been instilled in a lot of people's minds over the years that the Bureau's going to go away, and so will all your money and your resources and all your access to the funds that you've come to rely on for generations. And that's simply not the case.
You have to decide in your mind that this is what you want to do and then do it. And then when someone says no, you have to say, no, this works for us and we're moving in this direction.
It took a while to ramp up. But it's really fascinating once you get those foundations, how quickly the tribes matured to deliver programs and to design programs that were effective and efficient and responsive to tribal needs. So beginning 20 years ago, we just really didn't have an idea of where we could go. And over the last 2 decades, we began to realize that if we set a course, we could accomplish it.
Well, before self-governance, I could probably say that our annual budget for our tribal programs was about $150,000 to $200,000 a year. Now that we entered into self-governance contracts and compacts, I think we're looking at $6 million a year.
We have homes for our elders. We're warm. We have power. Our infrastructure's in place. And that makes me feel good when I walk around the reservations and see that.
We are able to bring back some of our language that was almost gone.
We have a full functioning court system, and that's due to self-government. And we have law enforcement that we're very proud of.
The apprenticeship programs that we've dealt with in terms of the funding from self-governance have gone a long ways to set up people with trades to become employment worthy. Not only do you get the training, but you also get the benefit of interviewing skills, job application skills.
We can put performance measurement tools that evaluate the performance of a program that is consistent with the federal policies.
We were a demonstration project. We did have probably 7 or 8 different programs that we contracted with the Bureau of Indian Affairs for. They had separate program cycles, budget accountability, audit requirements, and we chose to do away with all of that by entering into self-governance to reduce the administrative burden, but also to bring the decision-making home to the local level.
Greatest accomplishment, I think, is internal, because our people report on our programs to our tribal citizenry instead of to a federal agency. And I think there's a better feeling about accomplishment by tribal administration.
Kids can be proud for who they are and know their heritage and their culture, and making their regalia, making their drums, making their rattles or their paddles, and have that glitter in their eyes.
Well, some of the things that I'm proud of is we passed a Legislative Procedures Act, and we passed a budget ordinance adopting a forest management plan that is Smartwood certified, so that it's recognized internationally as being an environmentally sound management program that allows us to harvest timber, but allows us to get top dollar for it because we can export that wood to our timber products to Europe. We address solid waste and air quality and environmental protection, water quality standards. We stepped into the role of government.
What I like is when I go to Washington or go to the Capitol is to be treated like another nation.
The quality of life has increased so dramatically in the last 3 decades. You know, no longer are kids wearing worn-out kid sneakers bound together by duct tape, but they and their parents can buy the shoes of choice. They can compete in the local schools with anybody. They excel in our local colleges. More families are working, supporting themselves and their families. And all of that is a result of Indians being allowed to make the decision of where they want to go.
The role of the Office of Self-Governance is basically to help tribes achieve what it is that they want to achieve.
In order for non-self-governance tribes to become a self-governance tribe,
they have to have 3 years of clean audits to get into self-governance. They have to have done 638 contracting for 3 years and done a good job of it. They have to do a planning phase or a planning activity so that their council and their population is ready for self-governance. They have to have a tribal resolution that says we want to go forward with a self-governance program and turn our contracts into self-governance compacts. They have to apply to the Office of Self-Governance. We open a window between December and March. They apply, and we review their planning phase, and we bring them on the next fiscal year, and they receive their funding and run their own programs. It's pretty exciting.
And I've learned as an individual the magic of a seized opportunity is they multiply. And so self-governance offers just an amazing spectrum of opportunities.
In the next 20 years, I can see more federal agencies having a desire to work closely with the tribes to create the same opportunities we're seeing with self-governance when it comes to BIA.
If every tribe were self-governing, I think the BIA would turn into more of a training and technical assistance provider, as well as provide inherently federal functions that only federal officials can provide.
What I see is that eventually the tribes will be negotiating for their fair share of every agency, every program, every department that has any kind of a program that is intended for the benefit of Indian tribes and Indian people.
I believe in the enduring spirit of Osage Nation and other indigenous people. If given the tools and the resources, they can solve the problems in their communities far better than any outside source can.
What I would like to see self-governance in 20 years is that we have more tribes involved in self-governance.
And I encourage any tribe that is looking for a future, don't wait for somebody to hand you your future.
I think it would be a step back to 638 contract. I would not want to take a step back.
Well, the next 20 years is like tomorrow to me. So I'm looking more in the next 50 years, 75, next 100 years for self-governance. And that's the future.
You know, there's not a greater investment that the Congress can make than investing in self-governance. It's cost-effective, it's efficient, it promotes the things that I think every American wants, and that's self-reliance and self-determination, and making the lives for our kids better than what we had. And it's really passing on a legacy, and it's a tribal legacy.
I've seen us come from there to there, and that's our journey. That's our journey in life. You know, that's what makes me happy, and that's what makes me get up every morning and get on the road.